What's up guys, welcome back. This is our last video of this series. So without wasting any more time, let's see what we have to learn today. Open up our terminal, maximize. Okay, so let's suppose that we would like to create another user for our Linux operating system. So how do I know that what user I am currently logged in? So we can simply type who am I, and if you hit enter you will see Igor. So this is my username, right, for this specific session. So what if I would like to create another user? So you will write sudo for the elevated privilege, sudo space user add space whatever the username you want to add. So user add ubuntu. In this case I'm choosing or picking up the name ubuntu. If you hit enter, it will ask for the password. Sure. Okay, hit enter. Okay, ubuntu user is already existing. In your case it might it won't say this because your computer might not have ubuntu as a user, so you get the jab. Okay, now what if I would like to switch from this Igor username to the newly created ubuntu username? Sudo su for switch user, and if you type ubuntu. So what just happened is that we switched from this user to this user. How do I know that? If you simply type who am I now, you can see ubuntu. But you might notice that if you would like to run um, any privileged command, so if you would like to use sudo while you are using the ubuntu account, it might not work. So let me show you. Sudo apt update. We didn't set the password, so let me press Ctrl C, and now let's create a password for this specific account. So to create a password, you simply have to type sudo passwd space the username for which you would like to create the password. If you hit enter, now it is again asking for the ubuntu password, but we don't have any password stick to it. So we simply have to type exit to exit out to an existing username. So in this case Igor was pre-existing. So now if you type sudo passwd password ubuntu, so now it is prompting for the new password. Let's set a new password for ubuntu username, and password updated successfully. Now let's go back to that ubuntu username, sudo hyphen switch user ubuntu, hit enter. Okay, and now if you type sudo apt update, it will surely ask for the password. Yes, it did. Let's enter our password, hit enter. Now let's see. Ubuntu is not in the sudoers file. This incident will be reported. So what does it mean? This means that our user, this which we created right now, doesn't really have the sudo permission or the elevated privilege. It is just a simple user which can run the base level commands, but it cannot run any elevated or privileged command. So in order to make this user into a sudoer or a uh, user with elevated privileges, you have to give it some permissions. So we will exit out of this, and since this user Igor is a sudoer already, so we can do that from here. Sudo user mod hyphen a capital G, and you can use the man space user mod in order to see all these specific options and various other options. Hyphen ag sudo, and then the username you would like to give the permission to. Now in order to check that, the command would be sudo hyphen su ubuntu. So if you hit enter, And now if you enter any elevated privilege command, so let's say sudo apt update. Now as you can see that it is working perfectly fine. Why? Because now our user Ubuntu is now a sudoer, or it has the elevated privilege. Let's hit clear, exit out. We have many more commands, so let's see our next command. Let's go back to our home directory for this ego user. As I have already told you, if you type cd and hit enter, you will go back to your home directory. This is our home directory. We created mine directory. So let's go into the mine directory and type ls. Let's create a very simple, a very basic bash script. So as we all know that we are currently using the bash shell, bash terminal. So we will simply try to automate some stuff. So let's create a simple bash script. If you type nano, whatever the name would be, test, okay, test dot sh. So this dot sh is the extension for bash files. So type enter, and no rocket science, very simple command. Echo hello world. Press Ctrl plus X, hit Y, hit enter, and done. So now in order to execute a script, so we create, if you type ls, we can see that our file has been created. But in order to execute that script or run that script, the syntax would be period, which stands for present directory. So we are telling the terminal to look into this directory, and this slash denotes that, and then the file name for the shell. If you hit enter, permission denied. Here we are having the problem of the permission, regarding the permission, and in order to change the permission or modify the permissions, we have another command which is chmod. So if you type sudo for the elevated privilege, obviously sudo chmod plus x, which stands for executable. So we want to run this shell file, but it is not executable. As you can see over here, it is in white text. Okay, the text color of this is white, so it simply denotes that it is a simple plain text. It is not a script right now. So in order to make it executable, so we have to type plus x and then specify the file test.sh. If you hit enter and now ls, you can see the color changed to green. And now if you run the same command, okay, it executed and we got the output hello world. This is very basic of bash scripting. Bash scripting, we will surely, it is one of my favorite topic in Linux. So we will surely make videos, and I will teach you some of the many cool features of bash scripting in the future videos. This is very basic. I used this example to show you how to use chmod. Obviously, chmod has many uses, but we will not go into much details. If you would like, you can surely Google it, but we won't dive deeper into those stuffs as of now. We have discussed about knowing which user I'm using whoami. We created a user, set his password, we elevated his privileges. Okay, so now what if I would like to delete any user? So simply type sudo for elevated privilege, obviously, and sudo user del for user delete, and then simply the username sudo user delete ubuntu. If you hit enter, and now if you try to switch, sudo switch user ubuntu, no user found, sudo unknown user. Why? Because we deleted that specific user. So now we know how to create a user, how to modify or give it the sudo permissions, and how to set his password and how to delete it. We already discussed, I guess, grep, ps, kill all these commands in the previous videos. Let's say that you would like to reboot your system from the terminal itself, because many a times if you are a Linux system administrator or DevOps engineer or any sort of that role, then you won't be having this graphical user interface like this, so you can't click here and say power off. You getting the point? Okay, so what you will have is access to only a black terminal window, and let's say that you have to reboot the system. Sudo space reboot. I won't do it right now because my system will reboot, so I will not do it. But you get the point. So simply type sudo reboot and your system will reboot. Okay, and if you are using SSH, I will discuss just after this point about SSH. So let's say you are using SSH and you have connected to a AWS or any cloud VM via SSH, then your connection will be broken. Why? Because the system has been rebooted by your command. So I already mentioned SSH. So what is SSH? SSH is a tool which is used to remotely log in to the terminal of a Linux machine. Okay, so let's say that you have a cloud virtual machine running on a AWS cloud infrastructure, and physically it is present in the data center of Amazon in the region of US. And let's say you are in UK, United Kingdom. You want to log in into that Linux machine right from your home, right from your device. Then how do you do that? SSH. So let's see what SSH is. SSH basically runs on port 22 by default. You can obviously change it for security reasons, because obviously attackers will uh, attack on the default port at first. Sorry. So the syntax of SSH is quite simple. For local machines, you simply have to type SSH space the username at the rate whatever the IP address is. This is the most basic syntax for SSH. It generally works for most of the systems, but you might not be able to log in into cloud virtual machines like AWS, because they add sorry, so they add a layer of security to the SSH. So they will introduce something called a private public key pair. So it is kind of a locking mechanism. So there is a string present on the virtual machine, and you use another key provided by the cloud provider like AWS in order to log in. So let's say that Amazon gave you a key, test.key, which has to be obviously present in your working directory. So let's suppose that this is a cloud virtual machine in the Amazon web server. So the whatever the key they give, you have to save that key in this file and then run this command. Are you getting the point? If you have any question, or if you ever get confused, feel free to put a comment. I will surely answer your question. So SSH Igor, which is the username. IP address, obviously in the case of virtual machine, would not be 192. It will be an external IP 1721 something something. You get the point. Okay, x.x hyphen I test dot key. If you hit enter, obviously it is, let type control C, nothing is gonna happen. But this is the basic syntax for a SSH login, even if it is complicated, like in the case of AWS or any other cloud instance. So this is SSH. I will give you a demonstration of SSH surely in the future videos, but as of now, let's stick to our video because it will be too long if I discuss about SSH and give you practical examples. I will surely make a separate video, a short one, which will especially focus on SSH. And now we are coming to the end of our session, and let's see how do you manage the disk usage or things like that. So we have very famous command f disk hyphen l. It will list permission denied. Okay. So if you ever get any permission denied, very first thing you will have to try is typing sudo. It mostly works in most of the cases. Okay, so we got all these. So what fdisk tells us is all the various partitions. You have disk management in Windows operating system where you get all the partition Windows C, D, E, F and all that. So similarly in the Linux operating system you can get all those types of information right from your terminal. So fdisk does that. It comes in handy when you have when you are installing an operating system, Linux operating system, and not using the graphical user interface, such as in the case of Arch Linux, you have the access to the terminal itself and you have to manually install all the operating system and their files. So fdisk comes in handy while doing that. So let's clear out our screen and let's see our next command. Okay, so how do I check the disk usage? Simply type du, which stands for disk usage, and if you hit enter, okay, we get a really long list. Okay, but it is not quite helpful, I think. So in order to beautify it, let's say hyphen sh. Let's say in the present directory for all the files. Okay, this is much better. What did I do just now? So if you type du hyphen help hyphen help, okay, I type s for summarize. I don't want all that long list. I just want to get a brief about the disk usage. So I type S and H for human readable. So you noticed over here that it is saying 1003. So it is telling the size in kilobytes or bytes, and it is not quite human conventional. So what the h does is that it tells in gigabytes and megabytes, so it is quite easier for us to figure out. And what else I did is similar to the bash script syntax. We say that in the present directory hyphen period slash, which stands for look in this specific directory, and then we use the wildcard asterisk, which says for all the stuffs in this present directory, and this last slash stands for even if there is a subfolder in this directory, get information from that as well. So if you type enter 92 megabytes, so this test folder, let's see, this test folder is 92 megabytes in size. And go back cd, and now if you run the same command, you can see all the distributions over here. 4 KB, 4 KB, 4 KB, because all these are empty folders, and mine is 92 megabytes. Why? Because it has the test folder. So I hope that disk usage command is now clear. This syntax is really important. I figured it out a while back, and well, it really helped me a lot. So you can surely use it, and you can obviously check for more syntax. You will surely find better ones, but I personally use this one because it is quite useful and quite handy. And last command I will show you similar to this is df, which stands for disk fragmentation, and hyphen H for you guessed it right, for human readable sudo. And now you can see that all the different partitions which are present on the operating system. So dev sda, so this is sda partition is basically the user partition. So I have 10 gigs for this machine hard disk space, used as 8.6, and very small amount of disk space is left, and this is the percentage. And now if you omit the hyphen h, let me show you the difference. See, this is telling us in the gigabytes and megabytes, and now this is telling us in the 1k blocks. Okay, so it is not using the conventional unitary system. So it is quite better to obviously use the hyphen h human readable option, as it simplifies our command. So that is it for this video, guys. I hope that you really enjoyed this session and the series in general. So we had 4 parts, and if you haven't watched the previous part, I will really recommend you to watch them as well. These 4-part videos is basic, really very basic for the Linux operating systems. So these commands which I showed you in these videos are very basic, but they are the fundamentals. So practice them hard, and I will see you guys in the next one. Until then, take care. Bye.